Okay, cool. So welcome back to Talking Therapy with me, Devaraj. And today I'm very excited to be doing a podcast with Mr. Kevin Orosz from Austin, Texas. And I don't think I need to introduce you myself. I'm very happy you've come on the podcast. Thank you for agreeing to do so. And maybe you'd just like to let us all know who you are, your journey to get where you are, and what you're into today.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me, Devaraj. Excited to be here. And yeah, it's a beautiful day here in Austin, Texas. And yeah, basically, I mean, some of my journey, as a coach, doing men's work, teaching tantra, bioenergetics, um, doing a lot of mythological work, shadow work, through the archetypes, through the Jungian models, and also doing a lot of business coaching, sales, marketing, aligned entrepreneurship. Basically, I was born and raised here in Texas, been traveling all over the world for 8 years. I'm back here now for a time. And yeah, from a young age, I was really interested in psychology and philosophy, and also politics, which is what I thought I wanted to study. And to cut a long story short in a slice, basically went to university here in Austin and was going to get my PhD in psychology, and basically just through a lot of anxiety and hardship. And then there was a big betrayal, who I thought was going to be my partner. And, this high school sweetheart, this very young love, ended up cheating on me, which was quite devastating to me at the time. I didn't have any idea about attachment theory or codependency and all that. So that was a huge blow to my reality. And at this time, I was studying Eastern philosophy and Western, Plato, Patanjali, among many others, and getting deep into psychology. And I had my first experiences with physical yoga and then martial arts. And around that time also, I had experiences with plant medicine, and this kind of popped me into a whole nother world where I was feverishly writing and getting really excited to actually leave my circumstances. So I left Texas, moved to California, was working at a university there, got really deep into the music and art culture. I'm also a spoken word poet and MC, and went to Burning Man and went into the festival culture and just found this whole other reality of freedom and of expression and responsibility. And basically, went through another death cycle of, okay, well, forget grad school, forget all of this. I read The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss and became obsessed with blogging and building a website and being an entrepreneur, although I didn't know how. So I bought a one-way ticket to Asia, backpacked all through Southeast Asia, India, Nepal, studied yoga and meditation, went to the Himalayas, and went just really deep into my own inner journey, kind of hero's journey quest, which I was studying deeply at the time. And yeah, I returned to LA and founded a lifestyle brand with two of my good buddies and started just teaching and doing breath work, NLP, relating, various forms of business coaching and lifestyle coaching. And that kind of just picked up and up and up. And I've been creating content, seeing clients, and now kind of moved more into the NFT Web3 space. I'm super deep into crypto. I have an NFT collection. And yeah, I'm just really excited where blockchain can take the personal development industry. And I'm really excited where wellness and holistic healing, various therapy practices can be more mainstream and brought into connection with basically the wealth inheritance. 51% or more of the wealth of the planet is concentrated in 0.1% of people in these corporations and royal families. And we are experiencing a new renaissance right now. So I see blockchain technology mediating that. I see a massive explosion in mental health, holistic healing, plant medicine mediating that. And really, ultimately I'm a bard, I'm a storyteller. So I'm here to create mythologies, consciousness revolution through frameworks of meaning, which are stories. And so this is what I do with my podcast. I have a book also where I speak a lot about masculinity and sexuality and metaphysics. And yeah, basically that's me in a nutshell, how I got to this point. It's been a wild journey, and I'm still pretty young on that.
Wow, thank you. Lots of interesting stuff there. I've been picking up, studying a little bit about Web3 myself recently, and just kind of, a few years ago, I ran a YouTube channel on cryptocurrency for like about a year or so, and it was kind of a bit superficial and shit, but like I kind of tuned into some people who were talking about decentralization and you know, the potential there, and it's kind of fascinating shit as well. You know, something I noticed, you know, when I was doing a lot of therapy, you know, we used very strict, very strong hierarchical structures because in the group room, you kind of needed that level of authority. You know, you needed for the weekend or the, you know, sometimes 30-day workshop, you know, the group leader was some kind of god, or at least some kind of father or mother figure. And it was kind of necessary to hold the group, you know, and now that there's been so many people kind of pissed off with hierarchies and so much kind of pushing back against the patriarchy, and simultaneously this kind of rise in the background of the architecture to kind of roll out Web3 and more decentralized digital identity and trustless networking, taking all these third-party kind of out of it, and you know, basically leveling the playing field massively in a lot of ways as I see it. You know, I'm kind of intrigued where therapy will go and where you know, the traditional structures of therapy. And you know, like I've been creating a YouTube channel now for people who are interested in body-based therapy for 5-6 years, and you know, just looking at new ways to deliver content because there's so few teachers around and people are interested. And so it's all a bit of an exploration for me. What kind of thought, do you have any thoughts around where does therapy or spirituality, you know, areas which have had quite a lot of hierarchical structure in the past, what do they look like, do you think, in 10-15 years time, if there's more of this kind of decentralized stuff being rolled out?
I mean, there's levels here to what you're asking. I mean, I think on the technology level, Web3, for those that don't know, is basically the next layer on top of applications, software, and the internet as we know it now. You know, Web 1 was just like the browser and just like, you know, the basic internet, which was built in the 80s and 90s. Web 2 was basically through the 90s and 2000s, which we have this amazing explosion of applications and software, which is now what we live in, including Zoom right now. And Web3 is basically using a blockchain or a crypto wallet, being able to sign in anywhere and go decentralized. So you don't need a middleman. You can plug and play with anything. Think about Lego blocks. We have finance, art, governance, technology, innovation, all just playing together without the need for these big centralized, you know, entities like Apple, Amazon, Facebook, Google. So, you know, on that level, I think personal development is going to thrive in this space. Art and creative, music, media, all of that's going to thrive. Healing, coaching, therapy, it's going to thrive because once we move transactions to the blockchain, they become permissionless and more achievable for the common person. They also become more traceable and more integrity because the privacy is maintained and the anonymity, but it's also transparent. So we can see exactly where all the tokens and the economy is moving. And this is very much healthy. This is very much how nature works. Nature is decentralized. You go to the rainforest, you go to the, you know, the seashore, the plants and animals are all decentralized. And yet they're a unity in a symbiotic environment. So I think on the tech side and economically, that's going to be huge, especially for the creators and the facilitators that are doing this work. On the governance and the social level, you know, we've always been decentralized. Human tribes are decentralized, right? Centralized kings and emperors and queens and this whole thing we've been playing out for several thousand years. You know, it's worked because it was a transition period and there's nothing wrong with it per se. It's just centralization often leads to tyranny and abuse of power and deception. And then we're living kind of in the inheritance of that. So now it's really important that we find our tribes and decentralize, but there's still going to be centralization. It's just different. It becomes emergent. I mean, some of the words here are like the synarchy or the holarchy. There's a lot of you know, wisdom in this, and the Gene Keys by Richard Rudd. There's beautiful work being done. Also, Charles Eisenstein and some of his work with sacred economics and these things are talking about how leadership will happen in a tribe, which Dunbar's number is 150 to 200 people, just how we evolved. That's how many people you can emotionally track and create intimacy with. Beyond that, you know, it's really hard to keep a group on the same collective frequency. So basically, the leaders will emerge. It'll be emergent, and it'll be co-creative. There'll be councils where basically there's decentralized leadership. So it's not all concentrated on one person with God's given right. It's given to a group that comes together to solve problems, to govern, to lead, and then they dissolve back into the tribe, and it decentralizes that way. And I think we're going to see more and more people that move towards this model. We're going to see more and more organizations move towards this model. Blockchain DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations, move in this model. And, this is going to be better for the planet, for people, and for the environment.
Yeah, man, I mean, it's super exciting stuff. Hey, it's super exciting stuff. And I mean, one reflection I have is like almost all of these measures that are coming in around the pandemic, around COVID, almost like a little bit on some level, the last gasp of kind of this King Lear character just desperately clinging on to control, like someone who's locked in that kind of rigid pattern. I can be pretty rigid at times myself. When death comes close, they grip tighter. They grip tighter. They don't let go. They don't want to dissolve. And you see it with old people who haven't resolved so much and are coming close to death. They grip on tighter. And so I kind of wonder if the specter of these kind of mass decentralization events coming as we roll out 5G and 6G and shit gets faster and centralized networking becomes less efficient and that kind of thing. If this kind of COVID time is just a last gasp of these particularly patriarchal, hierarchical structures to try and desperately cling on to control, do you have any thoughts yourself around that kind of scenario or idea?
Yeah, I mean, history, I believe, happens in cycles. I mean, for those that want to get esoteric, study Terence McKenna and the time wave zero theory, and basically how history is repeating and fractalized, right? It's a hologram. Time is something, we don't even really understand. If you get into quantum physics, time becomes very weird because, particles can travel backwards and forwards in time. And this is mathematically proven. This isn't some woo-woo stuff. Because of that, I think we're in an echo of the Renaissance. So think about the Renaissance in Europe, a plague, devastation by religion, suppression, poverty, war. And what comes out of that? Well, a great rebirth and revival of consciousness and human values, art, beauty, music, science, technology. And it's happening, even as, COVID and this plague is ravaging, which a lot of the plague, I think, is mental and, institutional. The actual health toll is nothing like the plagues we've seen in the past in humanity. Not to downplay it, but it's a different order of magnitude of a crisis, right? And governments are using that to seize power, as they always do. And we shouldn't be surprised that they're doing that. Now, while all this is happening, there's a revolution happening in tech. What's happening with blockchain and the Web3 technologies that are emerging right now. Bitcoin, which is the most stable and hardcore money that's ever been invented because it's mathematically based. It's not based on, militaries trying to prevent you from getting the gold in their vaults. It's based on true scarcity and true decentralization because anyone can own any part of a Bitcoin worldwide without borders, without middlemen. This is a revolution in finance. It's also a revolution in how people communicate because now communities are popping up all over the world. And if their government, like in Venezuela or like Syria, some of these countries are just debasing their currency and you need millions of their bills to get a cup of coffee, well, they deploy blockchain nodes or Ethereum nodes. And they can just transact and send money to their families and move money around across borders. Look at what El Salvador is doing. Brazil's moving in that direction. Estonia, Malta, Puerto Rico. There's countries that are already innovators here. So what's happening is centralization is trying to squeeze harder, and the harder they squeeze, the more slips through the cracks, right? The classic mythologies in Star Wars, right? The Empire. You have the Death Star and the Stormtroopers and Darth Vader trying to quell the rebellion. And every time they push, the rebellion gets stronger because they turn more planets over to the rebellion. And the rebels can go and just decentralize, and they can just go into the cracks and the corners in the outer rim. The same thing's happening with tech and with finance. And I think I'm quite optimistic. I think there's dark times ahead for sure. I think a lot of people don't understand how deep some of these moves being made politically right now are deeply disturbing in terms of human sovereignty and human rights. And that being said, I'm still extremely excited for what's coming because the revolution of this decade, the Roaring 20s, will be looked back upon as when small groups of intelligent, creative humans banded together and created permaculture projects. They built housing, clean air, clean food, clean water. They created new governance systems and new legacy wealth through these technologies. And all the while by creating beautiful art and music and healing themselves and each other and the planet with these beautiful new ways. This is the eagle condor prophecy. of the Mesoamerican and the Hopi and a lot of the indigenous from the Americas. Basically, the eagle time is when the science and technology, the pure masculine war and innovation is run rampant on the planet. And the condor is the feminine. The condor is the indigenous wisdom traditions. The condor is the beauty and the love, the beauty way for being with the earth and with each other. And basically, when the eagle and the condor fly together, the earth will know peace again for thousands of years. And so there's a window of time right now. And a lot of these elders that have been holding these traditions orally for thousands of years in these jungles and deserts and plains are speaking into, and we're in that time of prophecy. I think we're in a massive turning point for the species. A lot of people are choosing to side on the wrong side of history. And, history is written by the victors until it's not, until we create our own story. And so again, it comes back to consciousness and storytelling, because that's what we're missing. We're not missing resources. We're not missing technology. We have enough resources and technology right now to feed, clothe, and house every single being on the planet. But we're not doing it because the consciousness hasn't caught up yet.
Absolutely. I mean, we're still locked in these kind of, I mean, animal life can be more real and natural, I guess, but also, they have dominance hierarchies as well. I mean, they also fight to stability usually. I mean, I'm not an expert on this stuff, but stability usually seems to form in the wake of a kind of agreed hierarchy emerging between members of a tribe, and that kind of allows some level of stability until the leader dies or is killed or something happens, and then it kind of goes around again until it does that, And so I guess, it's tough to work this stuff out. It's tough to work this stuff out, and yeah, I don't know. The world is in a kind of it just seems to be like in a really fractious place somehow. Like a lot is hanging on stuff, and at the same time, maybe the West. I'm kind of bored of a lot of I don't know, aspects of Western culture. And the last few months for me have been more about coming out of the West and coming out of that kind of bubble of wealth, and just seeing the reality for, the 85, 90% of people who don't live in the West, that they're living in these simple authoritarian regimes based around traditional dominance hierarchies, which pretty much everybody outside the West is. And in reality, a lot of Westerners still are to a degree. It's just that we call ourselves democracies and stuff like that, So yeah, I don't know exactly what I'm trying to say. A lot of stuff is on the line, I guess. Or, maybe it's all just going to move anyway. I don't know. I think it's good to empower yourself with the belief that the position you take is important anyway. But I was also intrigued, to hear a bit more from you about what's your take on masculinity in the 21st, or this part of the 21st century, in a time when men, have been under fire a lot, really, from many different sides, from women, from other groups. What's your kind of take on all of that?
Yeah, I mean, we're in a crisis of true masculine power, or as you're calling it, the dominance hierarchies, which I love Jordan Peterson's work and his studies of that. And, dominance hierarchies are real. They're not about, the most ruthless can rule through fear, but actually most dominance hierarchies are based on symbiosis. So the most wise, powerful, the most resourceful leader will rise to the top. And that's not through like domination per se in the violent sense of the word, but through prowess, right? So this is where maybe more of a meritocracy model comes in. And with the cancel culture and the attacks on masculinity, this is engineered, I believe, there's a lot of evidence for this. This is engineered distortion and mimetic warfare. Because if you separate the family, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, and a lot of the powerful leaders of the 60s human rights movement saw this. If you separate the family, so if you set men against women, if you confuse men and weaken them, if you, put women into fear, then the children are in fear, and then the society breaks down and it'll just kind of fight itself. Whereas strong men united and in love with strong women raise healthy, strong children, and then they form strong villages. And those villages you can't intimidate or dominate or separate. They're extremely powerful. They create economic power. They create heart power, and then they are not able to be ruled by these dominators and these dictators. And so I think it's very calculated what's happening. I also think that this whole left radical movement, the leftists, we're used to the tyranny of the right, over hyper conservative censorship. And, in the 60s, it was about like the right was doing these communist raids and trying to just shut down everything. No drugs, no sex, no music, like everything must be traditional. And so we're used to that because that really existed. But the tyranny of the left looks very different. The tyranny of the left is a complete postmodern deconstruction of all these core values that humanity really needs. Now, that doesn't mean we go backwards to old values, but it means that we hold on to the ones that are important because they've worked across time for tens of thousands of years for humans. So we can't just throw them out. But a lot of this attack on masculinity is based on that. And so I'm very concerned about it. Also, we just need rites of passage. We need men to return to the rituals of initiation. We need male mentors. We need the father archetype to return. All these boys that are in juvenile detention, prisons are filled, violent crimes, deaths. It's all because the father wasn't in their life. And that's what men need. The single mothers, the women who've been abused and used, there wasn't a strong father there to provide the providence, protection, and that guidance and the love from the masculine. So that's what, men's work is about. That's what a lot of these, movements are about. I've been part of Sacred Sons and in Europe, the European men's movement, which is very powerful, Mankind Project. And this is the work I do with my co-authors, Cattle Last and Daniel Dick. Our book, Sex, Masculinity, God, the Trialogues, is all about this, kind of deconstructing it from a psychological and philosophical point of view and laying out kind of what we're, wanting to see, which is healed men in communities, in healed relationships with women, and having that power return to the village, to the man, so he feels like he has a purpose and he feels like he knows his place in the world. The men who are getting confused by all this cancel culture and the whole toxic masculinities thing, it's because they don't understand their place. They're seeking meaning and value, and they're seeking purpose. And when they get lost like that, the culture will tell you all these things about you when actually you have to discover them. So this is where male mentors come in. This is where wilderness and ritual work, shadow work, sweat lodge, fasting, ordeals, therapies, all these things come in to help men unlock that within them. Because men are created, men are not born. There's a lot of men in positions of power right now, financially, politically, militarily, who are still wounded 14-year-old boys trying to please their mother or father. And we see what that does to our society, where a lot of us are being ruled by the least among us.
Absolutely. I mean, it's totally the case. It's kind of, can't quite put my head on the word, but men take a lot of shit at the minute, and because of the kind of abuses of the patriarchal structure. But at the same time, there's a kind of assumption amongst some of the people, I think, who kick into the male that, because it's such a patriarchal culture, that young men have got, some kind of advantage in this system. Whereas as I see it, the older men who are up in the patriarchy, they're if not more hostile towards young men than than they are towards women. They are also hostile towards young men. There was an interesting book by that Canadian writer, the guy who wrote Fight Club, Chuck Palahniuk, and he wrote this book Adjustment Day a few years ago, which I read, and hypothesizing that patriarchal structures had kind of started wars. So once the number of young men got to a certain level in the culture, one patriarch would kind of ring up his buddy in Saudi Arabia or some country where politically they were in opposition, say, hey man, we've got a hell of a lot of young guys that I'm feeling really insecure, can we start a war with you guys and just send them all off to fight and get killed? And I think there's, Palahniuk's obviously making things very kind of pat, but like there's an element of truth in there that's not really, because I do also support quite a lot of some of the currents in cancel culture, and I'm used to a more dialectical kind of reality rather than a very ordered or kind of structured thing where people just lay into each other and not in a physically violent way, but then something emerges from that. So I'm not against this cancel culture thing in the way that some people are, and that's okay that they are. But also, I kind of see that the men are getting a double load, and it's not really necessarily fair. And that a lot of the people who are kicking into men don't really see this. The men are also getting, they're not getting role models. And for some reason, men seem to need that growing up more than women do, or that's how it appears. And, and they are just getting dumped into low jobs, or just set into wars to die for no good reason, just to keep the number of men down below a certain level so that the patriarchs don't feel threatened. I think this aspect does not really come out. And at the same time, having been an Osho follower for some decades, it's hard these days to live in a matriarchal structure. There's not that many of them around in the whole globe, but probably in the modern era, the most, the big purveyor of matriarchal structures was Osho. Rajneesh, his structures were pure matriarchies, where the women are fighting for positions of power, fighting for trophy males, and the men are just kind of doing the jobs and getting along with it and kind of interrelating and talking about their stuff, and that's also interesting. And I've seen the strength in women from working in that scene for a long time. And so, I also see the aspect where men seek to control the culture because they're basically afraid of women. They're afraid of the power of women. They're somewhere deep inside jealous of the fact that it's women who have the babies, who carry the line forwards. So I don't know, the dynamics are kind of complex. I think the dynamics are kind of complex. There is this attempt, which the men stand up, they just try and control the women and keep them under control somewhere. And that whole dynamic doesn't really work. It would be lovely to see, I don't know, but as a young person, you could go and live in a more, say in your 20s or something, you could go and live in a really matriarchal structure for a while and just find out what it's like and how you fit into it. Instead, we've got this kind of patriarchal monoculture, where everyone kind of knows what it's like. And you don't often get to see the good points because, we're so kind of busy with the negativities. Yeah, anyway, they're just riffing a little bit off some of what you were saying and my own insights into the plight of the male side of the psyche. It's just tough for guys. And at the same time, somewhere deep inside, the man, I don't know, I guess from Tantra as well, that the idea of Shiva is this kind of holding presence, this that can allow the extremes and the hatred of femininity to be held within it. There is this aspect too where, all of this kind of cancel culture pushing in also can be somewhere held by the masculine. It can also be held by the masculine if you go deep enough into it, like a kind of encounter therapy group,
That's right. I mean, this is what Bhagwan was doing. This is what Osho was doing. He was kind of the spiritual patriarch. So he was just holding presence and giving teachings, and he was just kind of the fulcrum. But then, Sheila and the females, they were creating the matriarchy of the bureaucracy. And, they were getting viciously attacked by US government and all these, outside forces and organ. And it worked because there was a uniting mythology. And say what you will, they had their own issues and corruptions, but the core teachings, I'm very much into this tradition, and I think there's real gold there. And they've done longitudinal studies basically since the 50s and 60s when a lot of these communities formed, and basically the ones that stick together and actually last more than 10 years have some core principles: shared spiritual practice, shared musical practice, and some kind of shared understanding about sex, money, and power, right? And so, finances come in, betrayals happen. Sexuality becomes too loose or open, betrayals happen, right? It's not clear who's in charge, who has the power, coups happen. So the shared spirituality of any kind, shared religious experience, and shared musical experience, I think is the most interesting. So some kind of vocal, musical, trance, basically a group trance, which we would call communitas, is extremely important to hold these communities together. So I don't think a matriarchy, a lot of people are like, women are the future, we need to go back to matriarchy. Matriarchy has a different set of problems on the extreme than patriarchy. Yes, it would look different. Maybe there might not be as much war, economic warfare, But the matriarchy would be reputation warfare and, the psychological, emotional warfare, which is the female's weapon when they're in their shadow, right? The male weapon is like the violence and the control and the economics. So we need a partnership society. We need the synarchy. Healed, strong men leading with healed, strong women. And naturally, there will be some male leaders, there'll be some female leaders. I really believe in the old models, which again, these models have been around so long because they work. You can have a chieftain, the male leader who controls the world of the father, who's going to war, running business, initiating the men. And then the world of the mother inside the village is the oracle, the seer, the queen, the shaman, the shamaness, whatever you want to call her, who is the grandmother, right? So she's helping all the women hold down the tribe, raising the children, the babies, and controlling the resources, right? Both people and plants and animals. And she kind of masters that world. And they come together. Maybe they exchange information. The masculine is going to defer to the feminine in her realm. It's like, wow, who needs to do what? Who needs help in the society? What do we need to do? And he's gonna bow to her. Now, when it comes to other tribes or economics or the hunting or the outside world, she's going to go to him and be like, what do we need to do? Do we need to move? And this is how the villages work. And the problem is that really works when you have that Dunbar's number. So you have those small numbers of 100, 100, 150, 200 people. This is where decentralization comes in. On the big decentralized level, these tyrants, the only way they can hold it together is who's got the bombs, the bullets, and the soldiers. And so they can lock it down. And then, of course, they suppress the feminine, because if the females really have the voice, the world of the mother, they're running that inner circuit, they're going to tell them exactly what's happening. Well, you're not taking care of these people, and the boys are lost because you're not mentoring them. All the girls are scared because of the abuse. And so that would destabilize his power. So instead they just suppress. And, this has worked for several thousand years. It's the empire, it's Rome, it's Mesopotamia, it's Babylon. It's how they've been running it. And it has an expiration date. And we're seeing that now.
Yeah, it's nice to hear you talk, Kevin. You're carrying a good inspirational vision of what the future can look like, I think, and putting it out. What other areas are you have you been interested in of late? Anything else that's going on in the world that you see around you, where you know how it is? Sometimes issues kind of pull us in, and we feel like, wow, that's something tugs at us.
Well, I'm very, very bullish on cryptocurrency and blockchain. And this is kind of where I've put a lot of energy over the last 6 to 12 months, because it's the time, right? Like you can imagine, like when the dot-com bubble was happening, people are like, well, websites are cool, but what are they for? People are just selling drugs or looking at porn. And it's like, of course, that's the first thing that happened. But then, Amazon, Facebook, Google, these things happen, and we take it for granted now. It's the same type of revolution on a whole nother magnitude happening right now with Web3. And, I'm seeing this physically in the exodus of the people. So there's a mass exodus happening right now, even in the West, with the lockdowns, with the mandates, with the mismanagement of the Corona crisis. People are moving quickly. Real estate markets are massively in flux. Tech startups and these entrepreneurial exodus, where they're kind of at the cutting edge, but it's coming to the rest of the world too. Even here in Austin, like most of the US is gathering in Austin and Florida if you value freedom and if you value business, because these are the places it's thriving. These are the hotbeds of innovation that also have the most freedom. And, I've been tracking this and watching how people are pulling their money out of banks. They don't want to be in banks. If your money is in fiat currency, it's rotting. The inflation rates are the highest they've been since the 80s. It's insanity. This is the same for the pound, or the yuan, or whatever currency you want to pick. And, people are tired of working 9-to-5 jobs in a cubicle. It's completely inefficient. And with the gift of Corona is that now more and more people are working remotely. You don't need to be in an office stressing for, 8 hours, 10 hours a day. You can be decentralized with your laptop in Cancun, in Budapest,
Yep.
In Bali. You can get more done and live a better lifestyle and leverage your finances with geo arbitrage. So basically earn your home currency, spend the local currency, infuse money into that economy, and live better. And, I've been doing this, I'm biased because I've been a digital nomad for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's perks to each one, but I see more and more people are going to choose to leave cities. More and more people are going to choose to leave banks. More and more people are going to start their own businesses with friends, family, and colleagues, rather than serve these big centralized corporations. And if they do serve these centralized corporations, which some of them are doing good work, they're not all bad. They're going to do it from their beautiful suite on a beach somewhere where they're living so well and eating clean organic food, and with their lover watching the sunset, instead of in an office wearing a tie, miserable under fluorescent light.
Mm, mm, mm. Yeah, man. Yeah, no, I'm new at this digital nomad game. It's interesting. There's this thing called Plumia. Did you hear about it? It's
Mm-hmm.
like the idea of a non-geographic country, but a load of people have.
Mm-hmm.
It came from. There's a kind of famous entrepreneur. I think he's connected to Stanford, Balaji Srinivasan, something like this. He's like a big-time investor in pretty much anything to do with Web3, and I think he had this idea. I don't know why they called it Plumia. It's a kind of a funny name, but the idea is to have like a country which is non-geographic, and you can become a citizen, you get a passport, you pay taxes to Plumia, whatever your digital nomad taxes are. And, in other countries, because right now, of course, a lot of countries, especially poorer countries, are creating special visas for digital nomads because COVID has hammered them with tourism and regular travelers. And most of the nomads have gotten money coming in. They don't threaten to take any local jobs, and they spend money, pump money into the local economy, whether it's Malta or Ecuador or Estonia or wherever, so these new visas are coming along. So the idea of this kind of digital nomad country, a non-geographic country is coming. So, wow, it's like, fuck, I applied to join that a few months ago, but I didn't hear back from them yet. But
It's amazing.
Yeah, interesting shit, man. It's like
I've got to check that out. I mean, I haven't heard of this one, Plumia, but I've been deep in this idea. If you want to go deep into this stuff, research flag theory and nomad capitalist. And basically, it's the idea of having, multiple passports, an incorporated business outside your home country, where you can get massive benefits in how you do business as a nomad. And this is completely legal and completely ethical because, again, like you said, it's supporting these other countries instead of just paying taxes somewhere you're not even living.
Yeah.
There's also blockchain cities that are about to happen. Montana, Florida are talking about it, where, similar to what you're saying, we will live to see Web3 cities or decentralized cities and countries. And I'm bullish on that.
Well, I think Estonia has already shifted governance to the cloud. That's what I heard. And there's a guy in El Salvador who's trying to build a blockchain city underneath a fucking volcano. Did you hear about this one? He's Scott Alexander. I don't know if you follow this guy, San Francisco-based psychiatrist, not his real name, but like he was famous for meditations on Moloch a few years ago. This amazing piece. But he writes about this. There's some guy in El Salvador. I think it's El Salvador, maybe Honduras. I think it's El Salvador, and he's trying to build it's got a giant Bitcoin emblem in it, apparently, this city or something. He wants to build it under a volcano, So there's all sorts of, projects going on, some of which look a little crazier than others, but it's exciting shit. And I think I don't know, I like to read about this sort of thing because if you just tune into the regular news, it's like, it's all kind of, doom and gloom and COVID and you must protect and you must do this. And, I'm also sympathetic to that side. I was super into the kind of conspiracy scene 20, 25 years ago. I used to go and see David Icke and these kind of guys back in their heyday, and then I kind of worked through a lot of stuff with my dad, my adoptive father, and a lot of the energy that was pushing me into conspiracy stuff kind of fell away. And I also saw that society was changing for the better, that was when Web 1 was coming out, and so, I'm also sympathetic to, what are we really going to do about COVID? It's not as straightforward as a lot of the conspiracy scene that I hear, being in the new age for a long time. A lot of them have a very straightforward vision of, there's one negative entity trying to fuck with us. And I don't really agree with that. But, it's up to the individual, but we do need to still come up with solutions for things as well, whether it's, private insurance for people who don't want to wear masks in countries where ICUs are overwhelmed. I don't know, but we need to also come up with solutions rather than simply take ourselves out somewhere. I'm drifting a little bit, but like I see we need also, to address some of the issues You know, people who are in kind of in the alternative scene. We need, you know, something I've become aware of is the need to take responsibility, you know, to actually step up. You know, I'm a bit concerned with the alternative communities that they so easily go into the kind of conspiracy narratives, and that's their journey, and it has value. You know, it does open the mind, you know, but the danger is that you end up in the low ground. You end up in the same ground with the guys who are stuffing themselves in McDonald's all day long, occupying. You know, you don't actually say, okay, I'm choosing not to wear a mask, I'm choosing not to take the vaccine, but I'm also taking responsibility that I don't overload the local medical system. I'm not just saying, what about those guys who eat junk food all the time? What about those guys who smoke all the time? Which is what I see a lot of people in alternative culture doing, you know. So I've been kind of busy with this a little bit in the last month or so, and thinking, you know, for people who don't want to get vaccinated, fair enough, you know, but then how do you, you know, kind of actually still demonstrate to the rest of people that you're taking responsibility? Yeah, I'm drifting a bit here, but like,
Well, I
you know what I
mean,
mean?
I know exactly what you're talking about, and I've been deep in the scene also. I've also been down most of the rabbit holes.
Yeah.
A lot of it's very ungrounding. So ultimately it comes back again, this is the masculine stance towards life, which I think is very beneficial. Okay, let's say all the conspiracies are true, and there's a group of people that want to harm you and your family, and it's all fucked. Which, I mean, a lot of the conspiracy stuff, like, it's not a joke. I mean, there's declassified documents from intelligence groups that confirm a lot of it. Not the really far out there stuff, although, I mean, the CIA is talking about stargates in the pineal gland. I mean, they just released that brief this year. There's crazy stuff out there that you can find. But say it's all true. What are you going to do? Well, you're going to work on your purpose. You're going to build wealth. You're going to create art. You're going to build with your loved ones to see the world that you want, right? Great. Okay, say you're completely on the mainstream narrative, and, you know, the World Health Organization, CDC, they're good guys. Okay, great. That's true. What are you going to do? There's Corona. Well, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to build with your community. You're going to relate the health information. You're going to build wealth. You're going to gather your loved ones. It doesn't change what we need to do as humanity, whatever narrative. And so that's where I think a lot of healing is going to happen, is, you know, whether people chose to get the jab or not, or, you know, whatever they believe, they're going to have to come back together, because we live and die as a species. We got to do this as a group. And that's the issue with some of the spiritual bypassing and people getting lost, as you're saying, in the narratives, no matter which narrative you get lost in. You know, ultimately it's just coming back to the earth. It's going to be plants, people, animals, food, air, clean water. And what are you going to do with your time and energy? Are you going to make the world more beautiful and connected, or are you going to create more fear?
Yeah, wise words, man. Wise words. We have to come back somewhere to, positive vision to move forwards. It's true. It's true. You know, you think crypto is going to get a really? I was thinking, like, earlier this year, like I bought back into crypto summer 2020. You know, because I figured, like, Bitcoin was down around, I don't know, 10, 15K. And I thought, shit, man, this is going to fly up because COVID ain't going anywhere, you know, and there's going to be pressure, you know, on the economies, and people are going to buy in. And that turned out to be a good move for me financially. But I was kind of thinking, you know, okay, China's come down kind of hard on crypto, and China generally is really going into some defensive posturing big time now. You know, she's really going for it. But, you know, is a Western government, so the banks, really going to attack crypto? Because I kind of see them lining up to do it every now and again, but they don't seem to pull the trigger, you know. So I don't know if they've just got a load of crypto themselves or whatever it is, but I was kind of expecting, we're now in December 2021, you know, I was expecting a bit of an attack this autumn or winter, you know, but you know what it looked like. You know, it's going to be, you know, the local news, the daily mass media with, like, you know, crypto entrepreneur, you know, funding terrorism, child pornography, all bad things, whatever, and it's all about crypto. And, you know, that kind of level of attack hasn't really happened, you know, so I'm kind of intrigued. And, you know, as to what
these guys are smart. These guys are smart, you know.
Yeah.
In the same breath that they're like, crypto is used for criminal activity and blah, 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 they're buying.
Yeah.
Like, these guys are holding, and I say these guys, Federal Reserve, these old OG hedge fund managers.
Yeah.
You know, Charlie Munger, who's Warren Buffett's associate with Berkshire Hathaway, which is one of the biggest investment firms ever. You know, he recently said it'd be better if crypto never existed. China's doing the right. You know, he had this big press brief that went out and created all this fear, uncertainty, and doubt. You better believe he's buying the dip. Like, you know, these guys, like, they are not stupid. I'll give them credit, you know.
Yeah, sure.
Now, what's funny is, like, what's used the most for criminal activity and pornography and smuggling and drug trade? Well, it's the US dollar.
Yeah.
That's the ludicrous part of this whole narrative. The thing about blockchain, and this is mainly about Bitcoin. There's tons of other currencies. I'm bullish on Bitcoin and Ethereum, but you know, there's a lot of them out there that are full of shit.
Yep.
And there's a lot of them out there that are full innovation, disruptive tech. You can't stop it. And they know this. The only way to stop crypto would be to turn off every server and satellite in the internet. And they can't do that. The whole world's running on it.
Yeah.
So instead, they're going to try to bend it to their will, right? They're going to tax it. They're going to pass regulation. Now, the good news, at least in the US government, there are some congressmen and women who are actually pro-crypto because they see its utility in innovation, in surveillance, in finance. They're not stupid. They're trying to get on the boat, but with their terms. So, you know, will we go through down cycles? Will there be a bear market? 100%. Bitcoin's operating in 4-year cycles when there's a halving, when the block hash rate gets, you know, harder to mine. And there's a bunch of technical stuff we don't need to talk about. But yeah, basically, you know, we're going to continue to see the rise of these technologies, and we're going to see governments become more and more amenable to them. They'll push back. There'll always be a push and pull, but the future is, you know, the Federal Reserve, the Bank of England, the Bank of Australia, you know, even China will probably come around eventually, but they're the first ones to do it. Their central banks will issue stable coins, and they'll all be on the blockchain.
Yeah. I mean, that stuff's happening. I guess, actually, you know, the whole terrorism kind of drug trafficking thing is a bit of an old story, but I guess the main threat is like, you know, like Russian-Ukraine ransomware attacks, this kind of thing, you know, where they get into the kind of National Institute of Health mainframe computer and say, we want 1,000 Bitcoin by tomorrow, or you're not getting it back, you know, and 1 million Bitcoin, whatever, you know, and it's like this, I don't know. I know the WEF has been spouting on about this stuff for quite a while, and they're super busy with it, and they're an interesting little organization anyway, but I don't know. I still kind of, maybe it's just me, I still kind of think there's going to be another winter for crypto. You know, it's going to come in hard at some point. You know, that there's going to be another pushback from the powers that be. And yes, you know, Charlie Munger or Jamie Dimon, I think, even kind of reversed a little bit somewhere that, what if it is, a guy who runs that big investment bank, I forget which one, but like one of the big ones, you know, the most alpha kind of investment bank there is, JP Morgan, you know, and he was, you know, Bitcoin shit, and he pushed back against his own statements eventually. Yeah, it's all interesting shit. You think people should just go out and buy some Bitcoin? You think it's going up? What do you think? What do you think by the end of the year?
I mean, no one knows for sure. You know, none of this is financial advice. The best move with everything with Bitcoin is dollar cost averaging. So please research dollar cost averaging. Dollar cost averaging means instead of trying to time the market, oh, is it down? I'm going to buy. Oh, it's high. I'm going to sell. Just put in $10, £100, whatever, every Monday or every first of the month, and just forget about it. Yeah. You will outperform 90% of traders just doing that. This is generational wealth. Bitcoin, mark my words, Bitcoin will go to $1 million, US dollars. Because the dollar value is going like this because of inflation. Bitcoin value is going like this. There's only 21 million. These charts are going to go asymptotic, and at some point, Bitcoin will be the hardest money and the biggest transfer of wealth in history. It already is. It's the top performing asset of all time. It's only 13 years old, less than that. So, you know, gold and silver, precious metals, also probably a good move. But if you want to set yourself up for the future and your children and your children's children, I think, you know, even, you know, put in 10% of your assets. Like, you don't have to go crazy. But yeah, dollar cost averaging, basically just not trying to time the market, averaging into the market gently, averaging out, you know, if you want to take profits. I think it's a great time to get in right now. You know, people was like, oh, 10K is too high. hit 64K. Those people are coping. They're FOMOing in. People are right now, they're like, 50K is too high. The top's 10, it's over. When it hits 100K, they're going to look back and be like, fuck, it's just hindsight's 2020. So
Yeah,
just
sure.
mess around, get on board, experiment, do your own research.
Yeah. It's kind of funny. I bought my nephew, I usually give him like £30. It's about $40 for his birthday as a teenager. And he was interested in crypto. So I said, we were down having a celebration down the pub for his birthday. And I said, I'm going to give you 0.3 Ethereum, which at the time, Ethereum was about $125. I don't know, 2018, And then we forgot all about it. And then he found it not long ago and said, oh shit, man, this is worth like, $1,500 now and stuff. It was pretty cool. But yeah, it's an interesting idea. Yeah, just put in a bit instead of waiting for this whole, oh, is it going to go up? Is it going to go down thing? That's very good advice, I think. Yeah. You got anything else you'd like to put in or say, Kevin? It's been really interesting having you on the show and listening to your wisdom, man.
Yeah, I appreciate you inviting me again. Yeah, I mean, the other thing, I guess I've been saying this on any podcast or speech I'm doing is, for everyone out there right now who's listening or watching, and you're waiting for something, right? You're waiting like, okay, I know I need to leave this job. You're waiting for the right time, right? Or I want to start a business. I want to be an artist, a musician. I'm waiting. Or I'm in a marriage or relationship. I know it isn't working. I need to get out. You're waiting. Or, someone you're really into and you're not telling them that you love them. Like, you're waiting. What are you waiting for? Is kind of the message here. What are you waiting for? Corona's here. The event has happened. The whole world's shifting faster than it ever has, and it's speeding up. There's no time to waste. So go forth and just take the moment. Go in, do the thing, commit and like trust life, trust your intuition. This is a most fortuitous time in history. Crisis brings opportunity. So you can be in the down, depressed, watching the news, plugged into the fear matrix, and think that we're all fucked, and we just need to, if we get enough boosters, we can go back to normal. It's not going to happen. Move forward with courage and trust life. This is all part of the process.
Thank you. Thank you, Kevin. It's been really great having you on this podcast, and thank you very much for attending and sharing what you know. It's been a pleasure, man.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you.